Seneca Falls was the convention that gained publicity in women's rights and the suffragist movement. There, of course, was movement for women's rights before this event, but this was when protesting and enabling free speech really shot off for the suffragists. If we didn't have the Seneca Falls Convention, we wouldn't have the rights we have today for women of all colors. For many years, women were told to be seen, not heard, and we would no longer stand for it. The women's rights movement was a longtime activist group. They fought for many things, such as women's marriage rights, women's motherhood rights, women's political rights, more specifically, women's voting rights, which was the thing they are most known for accomplishing. The focus of this presentation is the convention that started it all. They created a movement led by 5 strong women, which will be elaborated on later, that lasted from July 19th, 1848 to July 20th, 1848. One day devoted to only women, the other open to all. Close to 300 people attended the convention. The convention was held at Westland Chapel, Seneca Falls, New York. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the most involved of the women in organizing the convention, she studied at Troy Female Seminary, working on women's property rights reform in the early 1840s. Lucretia Mott, a Quaker preacher from Philadelphia, known for anti-slavery, women's rights, and religious reform activism. Mary McClintock. In 1833, her and Ma organized a Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Society. At Seneca Falls, Mary was appointed secretary. Martha Coffin Wright, Mott's sister, lifelong women's rights activist, and abolitionist, known for running a station on the Underground Railroad from her home. Jane Hunt, Quaker activist, member of the McClintock's extended family through marriage. An abolitionist and former enslaved person who also spoke at the event. By 1848, equal rights for women was a diverse issue. In July of 1848, Stanton, frustrated with her role staying at home raising kids, convinced Ma Wright McClintock to help organize the Seneca Falls Convention and write its main manifesto, the Declaration of Sentiment. As for what was going on at the time, aside from reading The Count of Monte Cristo, published in 1844, or Jane Eyre, published in 1847, most of it was very simple and low-tech, singing around the family piano, visiting with neighbors, or picnicking in the woods, says Liz Bidnotnet. This relates to the current History Day theme, or debate and diplomacy, because of how controversial women's rights were at the time, and many years before and after. There was much debate as to if women of all colors should get the vote, and because of the diversity within the female gender, it was hard for a certain group of men to decide the same equal rights for all of them at once. There was never one answer, so they of course had to eventually allow women diplomats to broaden the thinking box. Successes. We gained the vote for women. Failures. Though women may have gained the vote along with other rights, they still weren't treated right morally because of individual biases against the female gender as a whole. The Seneca Falls Convention launched the women's suffrage movement, which more than 7 decades later ensured the right for women to vote, says History.com. This convention revolutionized the way the world looked at women and kept that fire going for so many years to come. Women, in fact, are still gaining rights. These include the right to live free from violence and discrimination. It's possible you're now thinking, but what importance does this all have? What impact did it make? You see, many women were starting to be seen as individuals, not necessarily equals, but individuals, which later helped them gain the vote and various common day rights. Many households drastically changed as the suffragist movement went on. More commonly than not, the fact was weaponized against women, saying they were never home and that men were becoming more feminized as they, quote-unquote, take the place of a mother. They were making it as if women were looking for men to become the discriminant rather than an equal society in which no one is discriminated against.
It was good job.